Hi, how's everyone doing today? This is Amy Hamilton, author of The Project Manager, Life is a Project, and The Consummate Communicator, Character Traits of True Professionals. Today is January 20th, and this is 24 Authors in 12 Hours. I am on my 24th and final author, so much for pronunciation, David Heizer, and this is his book, One Simple Equation. And the exciting thing is David said, hey, you know what? I'm the last author. I can talk to you all night. So we have no stop sign. We're going to be here and start pouring some red wine. So David, thank you so much. Welcome to the show. You are an inspiration with one simple quotation. You are an atheist of 42 years, and you kind of changed that. And one of the things on this show is I rarely do politics, religion, or sex. And this show, I'm like, what the heck? Because what I do want people to realize is if you agree or you disagree with someone's views, everyone has a right to have views. And so, David, welcome to the show. And can you tell us what inspired this book?
Well, it goes back a few years, but I had been on kind of a business trip driving from Tampa down to the Sarasota area, which is about an hour drive. And on my way down, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, I really want to write a book. No idea why I thought I wanted to write a book. I mean, I practically failed high school English. But
I just want to point out my other bearded author said the exact same thing earlier. I don't know if it's like men who future grow beards, like fail high school English.
And so I'm driving down I-75, which north and south here in Florida, and I'm driving and I'm thinking, and I keep this idea keeps popping into my head, which is, no, you have to write one for me first. And I'm like, what does that mean? I guess I got to where about the Manatee Bridge is, which borders a couple of counties. And it just dawned on me. I'm like, oh, wow, you know what? I think God's asking me to write a book for him first. And as soon as I made that revelation, the entire idea for the book basically was just dumped into my head. I had to pull the car over to the side of the road. I couldn't even actually see the road at this point. Traveling at 75 miles an hour on the highway, it was pretty dangerous. So I pulled over. I was going to a business meeting, and I am not late for anything. Let me tell you, that's one of the things that people will tell you about me, that if Dave shows up late, something's wrong. It just causes me a lot of anxiety. So everybody, they're trying to reach me. I guess my phone had died. And so they couldn't reach me. And I showed up about a half hour late, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you're here. Is everything okay? And we're like, well, yeah. And so I told them the story, and they're like, oh, wow, you have to write this book or you're going to go to hell.
Wow. Course, right? When people ask your inspiration, I've never heard anybody say I had to write the book or go to hell before.
Right. So, well, that wasn't what I thought. That's what these people were telling me.
It's pretty profound. Like, write the book or go to hell. I mean, right? I guess you better start writing, right? Like,
I better start writing. And so
there's some pressure there.
Yeah. And it was funny because, the equation is what kind of helped me find my way to Christianity. It was kind of like a little anchor that I used on a daily basis to just kind of reaffirm what I was trusting in every day.
So one of the things I want to do is steer a little bit away from religion. I think that everybody has a right to their own belief system. Absolutely. And, I'm not going to, I definitely respect that. But one of the things that you really focus on is the positivity and this need for an anchor and affirmation. Could you talk about it in some general terms, what that means and how people can go about finding this in their lives?
Just an anchor in general? I really think it comes down to kind of understanding yourself as a person, right? First and foremost, what is it that you find meaning in? And when you kind of approach that, it almost becomes pretty easy to think of an anchor. For a lot of folks, it might be a song, it might be a piece of artwork. It could be a poem. It doesn't necessarily have to be something rooted in religion or anything along those lines. It could really be any type of anchor that kind of gives you the ability to focus on something.
I think that's such an important concept. And you have this piece on here where I just thought it was awesome, where you talk about the nature of good and evil and the meaning of life. And I think one thing that we suffer from so much in this society where media is overwhelming us and we're
Yeah,
constantly just bombarded is what is good anymore? What is evil anymore? And what is the meaning of life?
yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, for me, it takes on some very religious meanings, obviously, um, but you know, I think for anybody, whether they're religious or secular, it really doesn't matter. It's the ability to find that peace, that inner peace, and whether you find that in religion or you find it somewhere else, it's that peace that will kind of drive you in the and hopefully in the right direction. I mean, obviously, the difference between good and evil, depending on who you ask, could be objective or subjective, right? So I really do believe, though, that it's finding inner peace, knowing what you're comfortable with, and really pouring yourself into others. And that doesn't have to be a kind of necessarily a religious mantra, um, but I truly believe that if you focus on others before yourself, chances are you're following a path of good versus evil. I believe that all evil is rooted in selfishness, and that when you're truly pouring yourself out through, as I mentioned in the book, through love, um, then it becomes very difficult to take the path of evil in that frame of mind.
So we've had so many other authors today, one of which was Kay Will, talk about the importance of the difference between selfishness and self-love and how loving yourself and then loving others is so important. And you've just kind of really touched on that. Religion can be controversial, politics can be controversial, sex can be controversial. I wanted to do a little bit of provocative topics today because being able to discuss it in a positive way and being able to have civil discourse is something that we seem to have lost so much of.
Yeah.
Have you had any times since writing this where you've had to face situations where you've tried to have civil discourse with people and it wasn't going well? And how have you been able to deal with these situations?
Well, yes. I mean, we just went through I think, probably one of the most contentious political um, times in U.S. history, at least going back quite a ways. And I do believe, regardless of what side of that aisle you stand on, there was a lot of difficulty from both sides trying to express their opinions, trying to express how they felt and why they felt that way, right? Um, you had the media trying to influence people, and that made it, I think, a lot more difficult for a lot of us here in this country to try to come to our own really true decisions in terms of kind of how we felt about what was going on politically. And so, yeah, I mean, just about every conversation I had typically would end up, and it would tend to lead towards something that was a little bit more heated. But I truly believe that stepping back and trying to understand where somebody's coming from will help alleviate a lot of that. It's not I'm right or you're right, or I'm wrong or you're wrong. It's we both have different and completely different viewpoints, and it's okay. We can still love each other. We can still actually be friends, even though you think something completely different on a specific subject. It doesn't really matter. We can agree to disagree. We can do it civilly, and I believe, really, at the end of the day, that's what this country was founded on.
I think that's such an important point. And when you look at your concepts of just loving each other, it's hard. It's hard to love people with very different views. But
Mhm.
so, for one simple equation, what is the one takeaway that you want for somebody to have when they do read your book?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a book that's rooted in Christianity. So I think, really, at the end of the day, if you wanted to try to step back and say, hey, let's look at this not just from a religious or Christian perspective, but also from a secular perspective. It really all comes down to just understanding love, and that In love is where you will find truth. Period. No ifs, ands, or
No,
buts about it.
I was saying with one of the authors today, and this concept of love comes back, and it's such a powerful concept. Is what I struggle with every day is that just loving people unconditionally. So
Mhm.
often it's easy to be frustrated. So often when somebody cuts you off on the road, you feel like it's a personal affront and things like that. And instead, you got to step back and say, you know what? I don't think that person did this out of anger or malice, and to forgive them on the spot and move on.
Oh,
And I hear
absolutely.
people, like, they come in and they rant about something very minor, and you're like, "Do you really think that person overthought that much? Or do you think that person really probably was just maybe just didn't see you out of the corner of their eye? Or,
Exactly. I
maybe
gotta
their
believe,
GPS just gave them last minute directions."
yeah. I really do take the stance that, in the grand scheme of things, of as far as other people are concerned, I'm not so important that I occupy every moment of their thoughts. I really don't. And so when somebody does something that I find offensive, chances are they didn't necessarily mean to offend me. you know, Maybe they were having a bad morning, or like you said, maybe they were changing lanes and didn't even see you. You just happened to be in their blind spot.
Well, you bring up another important point too. Is today on 24 Authors in 12 Hours. This has been an international book festival. We've had people from India, from New Zealand, South Africa, UK, just all over. And people with different cultures have different values, and they might not even know it's offensive. Like in some cultures, well, pre-COVID, that is, people used to stand very, very close to you in line. And as somebody who comes from America, you might think that's rude that they're up in your face. Or there are certain cultures where it's perfectly okay to cut in lines, and that's just the cultural norm, but we might consider that extraordinarily rude. And so understanding that people from different backgrounds and different cultures, they might not even know the social norm that it's rude.
Exactly. Oh, absolutely. And we just need to be tolerant at the end of the day. Um, Jumping and to anger, it's actually pretty easy to do. And so, usually, when you find the more difficult the task, probably the better the outcome. The harder you have to work at it, the better the outcome will be. And so, if we have to work a little bit harder um, at the job of forgiveness, and or just letting offenses kind of roll off our back, then that's probably the better path to take.
Forgiveness. Three authors ago, Dr. Katrina Esso, she was talking about the importance of forgiveness,
Hmm.
and so extraordinarily important. Is it a lot of times people say, "I'm going to forgive, but not forget," but we don't really mean that. We mean we're really still angry when we say that.
Yes. Well, it's so forgiveness doesn't have as much to do with the offense itself, right? I mean, you can forgive somebody for doing something to you, but it doesn't mean you actually have to forget. You know, I mean, if you've got somebody who repeatedly maybe stole from you, or damaged your property, you can forgive that person and not let that person back into your home. That's
Right.
perfectly okay, right? Forgiveness it comes from the heart. Doesn't necessarily completely manifest itself in, hey, you know what? I'm going to let you walk all over me just because I've forgiven you. That's not what forgiveness is about.
Really, really important clarification there is, forgiveness is about not letting it poison your soul.
Exactly.
So we are at the halfway point. I can't believe just how quick these interviews have gone today. It's hard to believe this started at 8 o'clock in the morning and it's 7:44 p.m. here, East Coast time. And I just want everybody to know my books are available today for download all day at Amazon. You can download the Kindle versions free January 20th, and that's The Project Manager, Life is a Project, and The Consummate Communicator, Character Traits of True Professionals. David, we have your website up. I also put the link to your book into our chat. Can you share with us a little bit about what people can expect when they go to your website?
I'm not the most technically savvy guy on the planet, um, but really there's some initial content that kind of talks a little bit about who I am as a person. Um, there is obviously a link take you out to purchase the book as well. There's a place to sign up for any emails that I send out once or twice a month. And if you just want to chat, feel free. I'm more than happy to answer questions about anything that you've read in the book. As a matter of fact, the book, towards the end, last page or two, actually has an email where you can email me directly. And I'm happy to answer those questions, thoughts, concerns, whether they be questions about secular topics or religious topics. I'm happy to talk about all of it.
Well, I think that's such an important thing to realize. I mean, the understanding that there's value, and that one of the questions that are statements that came in from one of the comments now is that peace, it can be found through selflessness. And do you address this at all, or would you like to maybe expound upon that?
Well, actually, yeah, there's a whole chapter on that in the
Oh,
book.
wonderful.
Right.
Maybe she read your book already.
Right. Yeah, no, selflessness is a key aspect to being able to love someone else. When I think of love in and of itself, it is the one act that is completely selfless. Right? You can't force somebody to love you. You can't make somebody love you. You can't coerce somebody to love you in any way, shape, or you can't even buy love. It doesn't work. At the end of the day, if you try buying somebody's affection, really, what do they love? They love the gifts. They don't love you. And so love has to be freely given, freely accepted, and freely returned. And that is probably one of the most selfless acts that anybody can do. And as such, it leads to a place of peace, a place of kindness, and a place of really understanding other people.
I think that's such an important concept. And one of the phrases I say all the time is that, kindness is a gift that costs you nothing.
Exactly.
And in today's world, today's been the inauguration. Hopefully, America can start coming together again, that we can realize that we are stronger together as a nation. When we practice kindness towards each other, when we practice civility towards each other.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
And a few of our partners today, authors out there, have said, how excited they are, and that they're ready for us to get to a point of working together again. And, David, having you on the show has just been great. What else would you like to talk about that we haven't discussed yet?
Oh, wow. How about them Bucks? No, just kidding.
I don't know who the Bucks are.
Oh,
Is
the
that
Tampa Bay
bad?
Buccaneers.
Oh, is that like football?
That's football, yes. Sorry.
Okay, I am like totally embarrassed.
No, don't worry about it. Actually, it was a joke. They've had a pretty good season, so we're all excited down here in Tampa Bay.
I'm happy to hear that. I was like, Bucks. I don't know any teams called the Bucks. Buccaneers put it in a bit more context. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
football, got it. I was like,
Right.
Bucks, are they? I don't know. It could be some new Florida team they spun up.
Right. Yes.
Or it could be deer hunting season. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it could be. I guess I don't deer hunt, so I don't know.
I don't
I do a
know.
lot of fishing down here in Florida, so that's my favorite go-to.
So besides the Buccaneers, back to your book, your website, and the services that you offer. Is there anything else that you want to share with our audience today?
Just keep your eyes out for the next book.
And what's your next project going to be?
So it's going to be it's going to be an offshoot from this book. Actually, there are two that'll be coming. One will be an offshoot of this book, and another one will be a little bit more around leadership principles.
Leadership principles, super important. I definitely, when that one comes out, love to have you back on the show again. You really just have touched on so many important things tonight, and I want to make sure that you're aware that your time is valued here. I appreciate it, and you bring that sense of tranquility that maybe for our closing author is kind of needed after such a long day, and I kind of feel like, this is one of those conversations where you're like, yeah, I feel really at peace.
Well, I'll tell you, that's really the key to life is finding that peace. For me, I found it my way, and other people will find it their way. Uh, but I'm at a point in my life. I'm in my mid 50s. I don't need to be angry at anybody anymore. For the most part, my career is where it's going to be, and I'm really happy with that. And I love the fact that, hey, I've written a book and people like it. So
Sweet.
that's that's been just a pleasure. So yeah, really just finding that place where everything's going to be all right.
Yeah, David, the points that you brought up is so important. And some of the discussions earlier today, one of which was Pamela McCoy, was the importance of mentoring young people, that as we get older and we progress and we do find this point of centeredness and peace, is how do you mentor and how do you share that with the next generation?
Well, having two children
And
definitely
how old are they
helps.
now?
14 and 20.
Oh,
So
wow. So you've still got a young one at home for.
I do, yes,
Right.
and she's a handful. But really, it comes down to, in my mind, again, um, managing anger, understanding that you know kids are going to be kids. They're going to do things that you wish they didn't do, right? But just like when we were
Even
their
when they
age,
become adults.
right? When we were their age, we made the same mistakes. We did the same things. There's really no difference whatsoever. So for me to lose my mind because, and I got good kids. I mean, for me, it's, I think the worst thing my son had done was, uh, oh yeah, he didn't do his homework, but told me he did. Wow. No, he didn't sneak out. He wasn't doing drugs or drinking. And then back in when he was, before college and all that in high school, he was respectful. I mean, he was a varsity wrestler. I'd show up to his wrestling tournaments. He'd run over and give me a hug, you know,
Aw.
right? And so I'm thinking, wow, this is awesome. And this is what it's all about. And so really for me, when it just comes to mentoring and trying to help that next group, a lot of it has to do with just being an example, really. I don't think my kids have ever heard me really even raise my voice at them. Uh, they've seen me disappointed, and things that they've done, but they've never really. And I do the same thing with my employees at work. I don't think any of them have ever heard me raise my voice, or anything along those lines for anything that they do. It really just comes down to loving everybody, making sure that, hey, look, you're gonna mess up, and that's okay, as long as it's not mission critical. we're gonna get through it, right? So and hey, sometimes when your employees mess up, you have to fire them, but you don't do it in a nasty, mean way or shame them. You let them know, hey, look, it didn't work out here, and really, my hope for you is that you find your happiness somewhere else.
So I actually had to terminate an employee in my second book, and I had like emotional angst over having to terminate my character. But it was, how do you show that point of sometimes people are not a good organizational cultural fit and they have to
Yeah,
not go, like let them go. But the other thing that you've just really pointed out is something that resonates with me, is that very, very rarely will a negative action result in a positive reaction.
right.
And so when your kids are little and you have to hit their hand and be like, "Don't touch the hot stove," I mean, that's a differdifferent level of protection.
Yes.
But most of the time, it's like, how can you turn something and spin it into the positive? And that's really where the difference is gonna get made. Because if you start negative, it doesn't work. And I opened up with you, right before we went into the, broadcast, that, the book that's, trending the most right now is Chomper the Bearded Dragon.
Yes.
And earlier when the author was talking about the reason for that she wrote these books is a little heartbreaking. Her son had an eye condition, and he had a patch over his eye, and another kid made fun of him at the store. And it actually led to her 3-book series of Patchland. And it really helps for kids to understand like these kinds of conditions. And she talked to the other boy and his parents at the store and helped them to understand. And so often, if you react, you're like, "What are you doing? Making fun of my son?" It could have been very negative. Instead,
Yeah.
it was a beautiful teaching moment, and it led to a book series. Wow,
That's
like how
awesome.
positive is that?
Right. Fantastic.
David, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else you wanted to add before you are my closing speaker for the evening?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it. Just the book One Simple Equation is some awesome reviews out there on Amazon and some of the other places you can buy books. It's hard copy, paperback, and an e-reader right now. And hopefully, I'll have an Audible version within the next 6 months.
Definitely take a look at David's book. So inspiring. One of our earliest authors this morning was Raven West. She wrote a book called Red Wine for Breakfast. I did not have red wine for breakfast. I had
I
coffee,
didn't
but
either.
I'm going to sign off with this last important, amazing author interview on January 20th with I am going to have some red wine, though, for evening nightcap. Thank you so much, David.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. And we'll have you back when you get that leadership book done.
Absolutely.